welcome to another episode of Songs Nobody Asked Me For. During a time at which interviews are starting to come to me thick and fast, which is great. For me in my timeline here, caught up with Izzy, and that was on Wednesday. Couple of weeks' time, hoping to catch up with Cam, yeah, on it goes, on it goes. Feeling in a sort of good place in a slightly insecure way, but that's partly what I was going to talk about today, really. Inside Out. And what's that all about? First of all, I'm going to say one of the things that's great is I've kind of got a new guitar, which I wasn't expecting to. But our drummer has a friend who was selling a load of things that had been his father's, I think, and in amongst these was the sort of guitar that sits very much alongside my guitar. I'm going to show it to you. This is a Yamaha. Look at that, it's very sexy, very sexy. Yamaha AEX 500. So it's a hollow-bodied flat. It's flat. Look at that, it's very nice. Control missing there at the bottom. So it's an old guitar. It's kind of from the 90s, I guess, but it's in good condition as in the main, and it's so light. It's so light. The strings are so light, and good for me. I kind of wanted to have a lighter guitar to play, and some of this is kind of an age thing I've talked about before. That thinking that over time, I know I have a little bit of tendonitis in this left hand, and I'm going to get that looked at soon. And I think a steroid injection or something will probably just clear it up. I hope so. It means my hand's quite stiff in the morning. And it kind of works itself out pretty much. It's fine now, and I've got a lot of strength in it, but it still worries me. So I think, moving from playing acoustic to playing my lovely green Gretsch guitar, which I hope to play for a very, very long time to come, is easier, but not easy. It's easier than playing the acoustic. It's a sort of gradual step, whereas this, I barely need to touch it. Once the electrics are on, it's quite a sensitive guitar. It's kind of, in a sense, it's almost more of a sort of jazz guitar. But it's got this very nice feel to it, and I've got really light strings on it, and looking forward to getting to know it, really. So that feels good. It's good. But I find myself in between. Where are we now? We're in the middle of May, really, and obviously end of April I did that first Songs Nobody Asked Us For event, and I haven't got another one till October. I'm regretting that a little, but not a lot. I'm regretting it a little because I feel it's too big a gap. But I also felt I needed to do one, sum it up, work out whether I could do it or not, and then do the other one. And the insecurity I talked about comes a little bit from then working out, well, where am I now? I talked, I think, a little bit on one of the early ones about feeling I now need to make the most of what I did there and see how I can move it forward. But I'm not really sure how to. And I've reached out to a couple of people, and we'll talk about that in a while, because it's made me think about this thing that I've become aware of every now and then in the music scene. And I think this is probably true everywhere, but and that is that, are you in or are you out? I think there's almost a perception, I can't think of a better term, but there's an in crowd. There's a sort of group of people that are all connected and know what they're doing and know each other and will know about certain bands and people. And then there's people that aren't in that. And I can get a bit insecure about that sometimes. I didn't really feel that. I plod my own path, plough my own path. And then I think once I've started to do this, it's meant I've stepped into the sort of realms of what's already around, what's not around, what things are there and what's not there. And it suddenly made me then, oddly, stepping into a place where I'm almost more in, makes me feel more out, and I don't really know why. And I kind of can mull that over myself, but I thought it would be interesting to think about, because this must be a shared experience of musicians over time, really. I think there's something about me that likes being on the outside. I can't deny that. I know this from upbringing, from things I became interested in. I always felt that if I was going to be in a cricket team, I would want to be the wicket keeper. I'd want to be the one person that did something different. One of my sons is a goalkeeper, and I think I would relate to that. So being in, but actually being slightly on the outside. And the best example of that for me is that I trained to be an occupational therapist. And in mental health, that meant I was very often one or two occupational therapists in a team of community mental health nurses mainly. So there'd be this big group of nurses, 2 or 3 doctors, maybe sometimes some psychologists if we were lucky, and there might be 1 or 2 OTs. And I think I kind of liked being different, but being, in that group of people. And I think it's just interesting, really. Maybe I feel comfortable in that place. I don't want to be sitting in the space in which I feel like I'm on the inside and I'm a big part of that and connected to that. But on the other hand, I can feel a sense of insecurity of being outside of everything. So some of that sits uniquely with me, I think. But then I also think, what does it mean to be in or not? And what do I mean by that myself, And I'm struggling to articulate it, but there's a sense you feel sometimes that you think you know the scene, and then you realise the more you just dip your toe in the water of it, that you don't. That there are lots of little groupings of people, or people who know each other. Getting to know Rob C has been really good because Rob knows loads of people, and he's really been really supportive of this. And him and Craig actually they stay in touch with me after that concert, and we've sort of chewed it over and what it meant and what it was like afterwards and what I might do next. And Rob's been really really helpful in that. And he's we're playing at Freedom Festival in Freedom Fields Park, which is it's the bank holiday weekend, the second one in May. So there's the 24th we're playing, I think 23rd and 24th, and I believe Rob's doing the stage management of that. But there are all these groupings of people around, and so he is known by lots of people and knows lots of people. But there might be other groups of people who don't know Rob and wouldn't know that scene. So it made me start to think that it's not about being in a scene or out of a scene, or out of a group, or in the in crowd, or whatever we'd call it. It's that there are groupings of people, and that might be one of the dilemmas and the problems. I don't know. As I do these interviews, I get to meet bands and musicians, and it's been an interesting process to work out who's in that inside group of people that are known in Plymouth. And when I say known, what do I mean by that? So there's some really useful groups, and I'm starting to get to know a little bit, like Plymouth Culture, for example, who are really supportive of what I did. But they clearly have artists that they're supporting, that they know, that they're generating interest for. I'm really looking forward to seeing, meeting up with a woman called Grace. I think it's Grace Lightman, and she is a really successful musician in Plymouth. I'm really looking forward to meeting her and chatting to her. And she does a sort of monthly roundup of the music that's on. And I've watched 2 of them, and of course it would be things that she knows, people that she's come across. And I think she was talking about an open mic on the last one and saying it, well, I think if you want to do this, you need to contact a guy called Cam. She said, I don't know who Cam is, but I'm sure it'd be helpful. And I thought, wow, I know who Cam is. And Cam is in another part of that sphere. And I'm going to be interviewing Cam very soon. And he runs the music at the Marina Bar. And if you watch my episode with Izzy last time, they were really singing the praises of the Marina Bar and how inclusive it is. But it's a sort of another bubble, another area that maybe is different from what Plymouth Culture might understand, or what Grace might be noticing in the gig guides that she's looking at. I read an article. I'm meeting a guy from Plymouth Voice soon, which is an online paper, and a guy that does their sort of culture and media stuff. And he did an article recently about, is there a scene emerging again in Plymouth? And it was really interesting, and talking about how there had been maybe, and that there hasn't been for ages, but maybe there were the roots of some, and then mentioned some of the places he knew about, and he talked about the Marina Bar was one that he knew, and then talked about the Thistle, which is a great pub in Plymouth that's been championing music for ages, some other places. But I was chatting to one of the guys from Ocean City Radio who was a bit frustrated they hadn't been mentioned in that. And was saying, what you're doing hasn't been mentioned. Well, I think, nobody knows me yet, so I can accept that. But there are groupings of people that are doing their best to try to understand or work out what's around, or help in those groups of people that they know about, which always means there are people on the outsides of those things, I guess. Where am I going with this? I don't really know. I think that one of my aspirations when I first started the event from this podcast of Songs Nobody Asked Us For, I started talking, I think rather loftily now I say it, is I want to start a scene in Plymouth again. I think Plymouth, well, if again, I want to start a scene, I want to start a vibe, a place where people get really into the idea that this is where original music happens and that. And I think it's slightly lofty and a little bit pompous of me because, of course, when you're on the outside of something and you're trying to um, develop something, you can often think you're the only person doing that. You're the only person who's got that idea or thoughts really, and that you're going to do something new. But I realise there are other little ventures and organisations and parts of stuff that are already trying to create scene. So what I need to do is I need to be another player within that. So somehow I need to make myself a little bit more connected with these places and people, which I'm trying to do. And I'm getting little bits of support from people, and that's fine. But how I get it off the ground and move it forward feels tricky. And I need the help of those people rather than to be, well, it could be. And what I think can also happen in these things is to be competitive between each other. I spoke to a band, I won't say where or what band really, because they're perfectly lovely and they're a really good band. I'd love to mention them because I think you'd really enjoy them. You should go and see them. But we had a little chat at an event we were both playing at where I think I was just telling them a bit about what I was doing, and I said I just really want to just create a venue that, or a vibe, or an event that supports original music. And they sort of said in this way that we can all do. Yeah, we already do that. We do that. We already we always make sure we have other bands play with us, and it's great. It's fantastic. But the danger becomes that you don't do that in an inclusive way. You do that in oh yeah, we do that. You don't need to do it, or it becomes competitive in some way. And all I can do, because I'm a great believer, and we can only do something about ourselves really, is I can try to make sure I don't do that myself. That I listen and I go, oh yeah, oh wow, that's fantastic. Look, I'm doing this, but that's really great that you're doing that. Whether I can do that or not sounds very grand. There's a many years ago. I mean, about 30 years ago, when I first came to Plymouth. I was an occupational therapist in mental health, as I say, and I came to what really at that time I would have called was a backwater service, really. All of the nurses I worked with, pretty much nearly all of them, had trained in Plymouth. And the OTs, there wasn't an OT college in Plymouth at that time. The closest one was Exeter. They were all from Exeter. And I was this London boy that came along. And I think the manager of the very, very backwater unit that I went to work in, which was, I found so depressing from having been in this cutting edge community team in London, in Paddington, to come to this backwater ward in Plymouth. I really didn't want to do it, other than we wanted to move. I think the manager of that unit purposely employed me because he wanted to shake things up a bit. Now, if you see our service these days, it's completely diverse and people come from all over the place, and very few units or places would have this Plymouth Exeter connection. But back then I was pretty unique. And I came to this unit and I came full of these bright ideas of what I wanted to do, and I was going to set this service up, and I wanted to do things in a completely different way, because I was given a free hand as an OT in that unit. Just do what you want, work it out however you want. A lot of the staff there who weren't that keen on having somebody new coming from outside tried to sort of pigeonhole me in a place. But back then, early days, I was very assertive in being able to say, no, I don't do that, I don't do this, and this is what I'm going to do. And I'm lucky to be in that place. But I always remember I was talking about, I'm going to set this up and I'd like to do this. And then I found in my in tray, as we used to have then, an article. Someone had put an article in it. And it's a therapy article. And it's called The Myth of the Hero Innovator. And I read this article, and it's such a put down on me, but a good lesson to learn, and I think it's a lesson for me to remember now, really. So the article's basically saying that people come along to new services or they join new places. And if we take the NHS, I join the NHS and I see myself as a knight in shining armour. And the NHS is this castle, and I'm going to storm this castle. I'm going to climb up the ramparts and clamber in and rescue the maiden in distress or whatever it might be, And this is what I think I'm going to do, and that's why I think I'm in the NHS and what I'm doing, And it's said then that the trouble was that the NHS wasn't a castle waiting to be stormed. It was a fire-breathing dragon that ate knights in shining armour. So that every time a knight in shining armour came along, they ended up getting burnt to a crisp because they were trying to storm the battlements when really they should be fighting a dragon. Well, in fact, what the conclusion was that somehow you needed to work out how to take off your armour and sit and talk dragon, really. So if you could sort of work out how to get alongside it. And I think as I'm talking, that's probably what I need to think about now, really, is I want to do something useful. I want to do something different. I want something really big and new to come out of the events that I'm trying to set up. But I need to be careful with how I treat the infrastructure that's already there so that I don't get too pompous about that. But I maintain some assertiveness within that I'm doing something. This is what I want to do. This is how I'm going to create it. Um, I think this podcast sits in amongst it all as being something unique at the moment, at least. There are other podcasts like this I've come across. There's one up north somewhere I came across, and I think there was one in Birmingham. There's somebody doing something sort of similar. Both, I have to say, were far more professional than mine, but that probably says something about the different music scenes as well. But while I'm doing this, it does create a unique space for me, and it is growing slowly. I've started to notice that my weekly figures are going up a little, not by a lot, but just maybe I'm having 14. No, in fact, this week I had 21 listens over the week and that just varies podcasts, but that's happening weekly now. That amount. So if you're getting 20, 25 listens to your podcast all the time, it just means those numbers are slowly going up and it's slowly growing. It's interesting. The last podcast that came out was it was one about age that I talked about. I have talked about it. Yes, sorry, I talked about. Yes, something like that. It's the one about age and where that sits within the music industry and the local music scene, really. And that one's had considerably more right from the very beginning, And the first couple of days, it had about 20 listens. And whereas very often, the one that's come out after it has had 3 listens, so far in the same time. It's only 2 days, but, usually over the week that will pick up. But it's odd, I can't work it out. But there's clearly something in some of the titles or some of the things that I'm doing that seem to connect for people and makes them interested. But this is my key place. And I think the more I'm starting to speak to musicians and artists, the more that grows. But again, it's interesting because I'm aware that some of those artists will be known by a lot of people and some won't. So really lovely to see Izzy last week, and they're not known really by anybody at the moment, but would love to be, and I'm really keen for people to know more about them really and to listen to their music. And they're going to be coming on the October one with us. But there are other bands that are probably more in circle of life, as it were. Really, I don't know. We will see. And whether or not I'll be able to cope with being a little more in than out, I don't really know. And maybe because I've got this unique thing, this podcast, this thing I'm doing will help me to feel comfortable being slightly on the outside, but being on the inside as well, doing what other people want to do, whilst also doing something a little bit different. I don't know. We have to work out our own psyche within all of these things, don't we? I have to feel comfortable with who I am as a musician and a performer, but who I am as a person as well. I talked with Izzy about that idea of what we were like on stage and how I wish I was a little bit more, not a lot, but a little bit more flamboyant or confident on stage. And they were talking about how they kind of were, they could just be themselves and be, and I've seen them play and obviously very flamboyant, very sort of out there, and I'm quite envious of that confidence. Really. I don't want to perform like them, but I like to find myself a little bit more. And my confidence sits within all of this too, with the podcast, with the event, with being out there, being in this community of people. I'm meeting the guy from Plymouth Voice this week, actually. I'm hoping to catch up with him. I told him a little bit about what I was doing, and he was very keen to meet up with me. I'm looking forward to spending some time with him. And then I need to keep branching out. I'm trying to get back in touch with Plymouth Culture. The contact I have there is often really busy, so I'm trying to pin her down again. And I think meeting Grace will be useful as well. And it's just popping these feelers out. But I'm also trying to work out how I keep the event alive before October. After October, I've got another one in January, so November, December. That's 3 months. So it's kind of 3 months, and then I'm going to go for 2 months, and then I'm going to try and make it every other month. Because I'm also aware that I've got, it was a nice dilemma, but quite a few acts that actually want to be part of that. And it's not straightforward, I don't really feel I can have a really nice sort of, let's say, a female singer-songwriter and then have a thrash metal band and then have a sort of a country band to finish. It doesn't really work. So I'm trying to sort of bring groupings of people together that I think would fit. And that means time delays for some people and some people getting in earlier, and you know, and if any of the bands that have been interviewed by me are watching this and thinking, why haven't we had it? I've got everybody in mind. I've got everybody in mind, but it's a pattern of working it around. It's also in terms of the interviews. I'm trying to do more interviews. I really want to say a big thank you, which I've probably already done at some level, for Cafe Momus letting me use their space. Really, really helpful. And I think the sound was okay. It's a little bit like it's very obvious I'm in a big room, but I don't mind that for now. It's clear, and it was clear, and it was nice. I'll work on it. I did it on the stage. I might try it in the corner of the room next time, or somewhere different. It's nice to have all the art around as well. It's kind of so I might try sitting in a different space next time and see where that goes. Okay, yeah. Please follow the band hashtag Music the Curve. I always say that. Please follow this podcast, like the podcast, comment on it. You know, say hi to me. I really value it. You know, I get the odd comment every now and then. Really useful ones. I've been messaged on it as well a couple of times. Somebody suggesting someone I could meet up with, which I'm really looking forward to. I'm going to try and catch them at some point. Onwards and upwards, and hopefully, well, I know I'm moving into a vein of more interviews, and I'm thinking that I might next time have another interview to show. I really don't know yet. It's always impossible to tell, but I have another one coming up soon. So, you know, watch this space. And yeah, see ya.
I saw a picture on the TV screen, bones being shattered to a